The Close Weekly brings you the most actionable advice for today's real estate market. We'll unpack what you need to know to move the needle in your business in a real way. This podcast is brought to you by Premier Real Estate Agent Training Program, The Close Pro. Go to theclose.com/podcast to learn more and to get $25 off. Now, here's your host, the man who has been a top producing agent for over 25 years, Sean Moudry.
So welcome, everybody. Hey, it's Sean Moudry, and I'm excited because this is our first episode of the Close Weekly podcast. And for those of you that don't know, the Close Weekly podcast is our way at the Close to keep you guys up to date on everything that's going on in the real estate. And today we have an outstanding guest today. Her name is Sarah Reynolds. And Sarah, welcome.
Thank you, Sean. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. I love this. This is going to be so cool because you and I, not only have we were friends, but we get to the opportunity to work together. And when we were talking about this, I thought of nobody else better to have the opportunity to talk to on the very first episode. So I'm so excited.
I love the name. As you know, I would love the name, but the Close, all about closing in multiple ways. So yeah, I love it.
Always be closing, right?
Exactly. Always.
Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross.
Yes.
For those of you that are maybe not in tune with that, you Google that. Google Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross, always be closing.
That's right.
So for those of you that are listening that have not heard of Sarah, where have you been? Let's start there. Where the hell you been? Sarah runs one of the largest teams, not only in the country, but likely in the world. So Sarah, give us an idea, 2021 projections. What do you look like you're going to finish 2021 at?
Yeah, so we are going to do over $1 billion with a B in sales volume, which is just crazy, amazing, obviously. Over 25 million in gross commission income. We'll help well over 2,000 families. We're in five different markets, and about 200 amazing team members that have gotten us to this point. And we're a team family. We did that together, and we've just been able to do all of that and then give back to our communities that we serve in a big way as well. So it's been an amazing year. And I'm just grateful for the fun that we get to have along the way.
So one of the topics that we want to discuss on the episode one of the Close Weekly, it's 2022. And what do you perceive are going to be the biggest trends? I mean, from the level that you're practicing real estate at, you're in multiple states, you're dealing with so many different levels of different types of transactions, different things going on in the market. And let's be honest, like you're investing millions of dollars into your business each and every year. You have to be paying attention to, all these crazy things that are going on in the industry. So I'm really curious to hear, what do you think are maybe the top 3 trends that are going to happen in 2022 that we should be paying attention to?
Well, first, I think we are still going to have an inventory shortage. And I actually don't even like saying inventory shortage because we are not lacking houses. It's inventory on the MLS. And so we are going to see less homes come on the open market through the MLS. We're going to see more sellers choose to sell off market. And so focusing on creating more value, how you overcome that is focusing on creating more value for those sellers.
Well, be more specific. I'm not quite clear. Are you saying like these companies like Opendoor and Zillow buying directly, like that's going to become a bigger business?
I do think so. And I think you're going to see teams, the smart ones and agents find a solution to that problem. So the reason why sellers choose that is because of how stressful it is to sell a house, right? And they are choosing to give up money for less stress. And so either more agents are going to step up to give an answer to that stress, right? or they're going to give other options in terms of selling their home.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've noticed a transition in what sellers expect from an agent over the past 20 years, right? And today, if you want to have value as an agent, you really are operating almost more of a concierge, right? Like, we joke around that it's like project management. Like, yes. I'm a project manager. That's who you're hiring.
Yeah, that's right? True.
That's true. And why is it? Is because they're busy, right? Yes. They have busy lives. They have busy businesses. You know, they have their job. And the ones that see the value in an agent are the ones that say, hey, I want to hand off everything, not just the transaction, right? Yeah. Like, so you're just saying one more layer to that is to find a solution that is, hey, I don't have to go on the market. So do you see more teams actually buying houses like Opendoor?
I do. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Well, which goes hand in hand with number 2 trend is just we will be seeing more teams rise in terms of just like, and even mergers happening and big teams coming together, because the reality is that with tech and with Wall Street money that's going on, I mean, the only way to compete really in that sense is to make sure that we are working together in terms of servicing clients. So you mentioned concierge. Well, it's really hard to do that by yourself, right? And the more that sellers expect, the more you're going to see teams and the need to be on a team or to be part of a team or to run a team or teams to merge. We're going to see that happening more for sure.
That's an interesting topic. So let's dig a little bit deeper into that because I agree. I see that trend too. And I also can see where as an independent agent, right, you're out there, you're handling everything. You're responsible for everything. And it's so hard as an independent agent to continue to grow your business, right?
Yeah.
With handling all the parts. So a team to an independent agent can be attractive, right? It can be really attractive. But one of the challenges that we've seen on many teams is the inability to make a decent living. So how does an agent bridge that? Like, how does that work? Because nobody wants to go from, hey, I do 10 deals on my own, but I'm going to do 20 on the team, but I'm going to make less money. Like, that's not a good transition.
Yeah, I think it depends on how you look at it. So I think a big fail of our industry is we talk commission split all the time. Like it is like, and no other industry is like this, by the way. Like their salespeople are not like that. They're not looking at that. What they look at is that how much they make per sale, dollar figure, right? Dollar figure. And how many hours they had to put in to make that happen. So if you're doing 10 sales on your own, right? And of course I'm passionate about team building. So you're getting me on the soapbox here, but if I do 10 sales on my own, but I'm handling all of the things, well, of course that it makes sense for me to be able to get more of the commission, right? In that sense. Right. If you're doing 20, it's not the same when you have a team supporting you in terms of hours spent. And I think that's the key, is to focus on your dollar per hour and not focus on commission split, but focus on your dollar amount that you're making, right? So if you're going to make $5,000 per transaction on the team, but then you're not having to do as much, you can do more transactions, then you can blow out what others are making. I mean, just on my team alone, the average is 172,000 net. Okay. That's more than most individual agents make.
The average agent on your team is netting 175,000.
Yes, it's 172,000. I need to recalculate that here for this year, but that's what it was last year, and which is my most proud stat, to be honest. Yeah. But because we're impacting their life in such a big way, so you can make massive amount of money on a team, and enjoy your life more, which is what this is about. So,
and to compare that, right? So, and I'm not here to like pitch teams either, but I do see the trend. I do see that happening also. So I think it's an interesting thing, but it's new. It's so new to so many people. This idea of the team. I almost see like the team is replacing the role that the broker used to do. So
I think, well, the other trend that's probably going to happen is brokers are going to probably run similar team models. Like we're going to see these merge. We're already seeing them merge together, but we're going to see more brokerages offering more team-like services and vice versa. And eventually, I think we're going to look up and there's going to be one sort of concept, which is probably going to be more like a team concept. In the end, that's but we're still probably 5 to 10 years out from that actually happening. But for sure, absolutely, it's going to look like a lot of the brokers are going to look like teams and vice versa. So
yeah, I think about it like in the 70s and 80s, which I wasn't in real estate in the 70s and 80s. I got licensed in 94, so that's how long I've been in it. So, but in the 70s and 80s, it seemed to me like you joined a brokerage, they advertised their name, the phone rang at the office, you answered the phone as the agent, took the lead out, and then your split was based on the fact that the brokerage did a lot of the lead generation, some of the file management, and you performed the sales transaction. So, a fair split like 50-50 or 60-40 was a pretty common split back then.
True.
But then as it started changing and as technology made it, easier for agents to perform on their own or market themselves directly, we started to see these splits all of a sudden start to go in the agent's favor. But now, like we talk about, like there's 2.5 million agents right now.
Yep.
And the average agent's doing less than 2.5 transactions a year.
Yeah.
Right.
Which makes us like the closest to poverty level industry.
Yeah, I think it's the average income, and this isn't NAR stats because National Association of Realtors, there's 1.6 million agents that are part of the Association of Realtors. That's a different stat. So for some of you that are sitting here saying, no, it's 10 or it's 12, that's NAR stats. We're talking about anybody with a real estate license, right?
Yeah.
And the number of transactions that went down in relationship to that is closer to 2.5. Yeah, you're making 30 grand a year.
Yeah.
Like crazy.
Yeah. Well, it's because it's you're responsible for being all things to all people and having every strength as a traditional individual real estate agent, which no one does. I mean, I could not do what I do every day. You couldn't do what you do every day. Like if we were on our own, like we would hate it most of the time. All that has to happen to me, right? And then we just wouldn't be able to do that much. So it's broken. And I think the industry is waking up and seeing that. And what's forcing it is some of this disruption that's happening in terms of big tech and Wall Street. But it's good for us. I lean into it. I'm like, let's disrupt too. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I think more options for the consumer is better.
Yes.
Period.
Yes.
No matter who it's coming from. Yes, it's annoying. Yes, it's frustrating. Yeah, they took our data. Yeah, they took our photos, whatever. But more options for the customer is beneficial. And it creates a lot of opportunity for agents who are innovative and creative to adapt and get ahead of the market.
One of my favorite books is called Remarkable. Mm-hmm. And in the book, he talks about competition and how a lot of people are like, just look at competition as, I've got to beat that person or things like that. But what he says is how you should be looking at competition is how can I be the company that provides the most value to the consumer, right? Don't look at competition, look at how can you provide the most value to the consumer? And I think that is what has been happening is companies come along to give more value. And at the end of the day, if buyers and sellers win, then we win if we have that mindset. Yeah. But we need to have that mindset that it's about helping more buyers and sellers with real estate. And if we have that mindset, man, you can do a lot of things. So provide more value. Well,
that's good. So what do you see as the third trend that people should be paying attention to?
Well, I think the big trend that I'm seeing this has been the last couple of years, and I'm starting to see it turn a little bit. But this idea that the seller pays all of the commission for both buyers and sellers, I don't know how. It will be interesting to see what happens in 2022 around this topic. But when it was set up that the seller pay both sides, there was no such thing as buyer agency. Mm-hmm. So what it was that when a buyer had another agent write the contract, that agent was a sub agent to the seller. right? And correct me if I'm wrong, Sean.
No, I think it's,
like,
I think it's different state to state, but that is definitely what they taught us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like technically they all represented the seller, right?
Mhm.
And so now, buyer agency came about, I think in the late 90s, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And that came about, right? But the finance part never changed.
Mhm.
And so we're going to start seeing a sort of different dynamic happening in our industry in terms of what value do you provide a buyer? What is the fee that you should charge? And then potentially be collecting that from the buyer, not just from the seller or the listing agent.
Yeah, because there's a couple lawsuits right now pending about
Yes.
that too. I know of one in California, and the argument in California isn't that the seller pays it. The argument in California is that the buyer is paying for the seller agent to negotiate against them, because technically the buyer is paying it in the purchase price.
Yes, they are the consumer.
They are the consumer.
Yes, they are that's what has been said. That was always like who is the consumer. But that is, I believe the DOJ made a ruling on that, actually, saying that they are the consumer. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting.
So,
interesting. Yeah. So we see a transition in that. And then probably, do you see a transition in the amount that commissions are going to be, that people are going to be willing to pay?
Well, that's debatable for me right now. Like, I do think that a lot of people in our industry are saying that. Mm-hmm. I'm a big believer, like I said, in the Remarkable book, of providing more value. And to me, it's like, okay, if we can provide more value, then we don't have to see that happen. But each person, based on what they give, the consumer should then put a fee that makes sense, right? And so it'll be interesting to see how this all sort of plays out. I mean, 2021, I've never seen buyer's agents work this hard. Yeah. Right. And so it's like, okay, well, it's not like we're working less. And a lot of agents are paying less on the listing, or a lot of sellers, I should say, or whoever's paying the commission. I don't even think we know now. Whoever's paying the commission is offering less for you to do more work. I think I just heard a stat, and again, I'll have to look up where the stat is, that 8 million people right now are either in forbearance or in foreclosure. Mm-hmm. And so, there's a lot of talk about, a possible recession, a possible inventory flooding the market. Well, I definitely am concerned about that. And I mean, I got in the business in 2006. And what happened was that the banks did flood the market when that happened. And so inventory shot up really fast when more foreclosures took place. They didn't figure this out till about 2010. Mm-hmm. And then we saw a drastic change in the market. And so although it's concerning, I don't think I think they learned a big lesson there, that it's sort of their, to their detriment to everything to go on the market at the same time, instead to sort of release them slowly to where the values don't decline in a big way. So I think that it'll be interesting to see, but after living through that in such a real way before, and I know this is a little bit different, but I do think that we learned some big lessons there that I don't think it was soon enough now that they won't repeat themselves.
Yeah. It's too top of, I mean, literally it's probably a lot of the politicians.
Same ones are there. Yeah.
People.
Yeah.
True. That's pretty funny. True. That's very true. That's very true. That's an interesting perspective. I did hear on the news the other day, they were talking about institutional investors, some of these investors they were talking about 3 specifically that own over 100,000 residential units, and they're buying homes and turning them into rental properties. I think because their perception is, that the home building isn't going to keep up with population growth and migration and birth rates and that kind of stuff in America in general. So certain markets, they own literally 10,000, 20,000 homes in one area. And these aren't like big cities, which really was interesting to me. I think the news article was talking about Fayetteville, and this one institutional investor owns something like 6,000 homes in Fayetteville, which is that's not a big city.
No,
I mean,
wow,
it's maybe 100,000 military, highly military. And I think they said 1 in 4 homes, 1 in 4 is owned by an investment company or an investment investor. So
Wow.
I think, to me, a lot of these institutional investors that are looking at, I have money that's publicly traded, long-term money, they're just looking at buying stuff and holding it for 20 years. They're not worried about any kind of dip. And I think if you look back at what happened in the S&L crisis of the 80s, they formed the Resolution Trust Corp, the RTC, which sold directly to investors. And then during the Great Recession that we saw in 2009, not in every market, but I know in markets like Phoenix, where they had something like 35,000 foreclosed homes hit the market at the same time, they were selling, lots and lots of properties to these institutional investors. So I do agree in the sense of, I think the inventory is going to get eat up pretty quick if it hits. But as a team leader, what do you say to your agents?
Well, it's always, in my mind, real estate is the path to wealth building. And I have seen it now, being in it well over almost 2 decades now. I've seen it do well in the end. So even though I've seen it dip dive, I've seen it go up to where I know if you keep something for 10 years, then you will make a good return. So in my mind, how low interest rates are mixed with those two things, honestly, it is such a good time to buy. It's always a good time to buy and start building wealth in real estate and just showing the power. If you talk to like a stockbroker right now, they're going to show you the trends over 20, 30 years. And I think as realtors, we need to do more of that. We need to educate them on what does a home do in 20 to 30 years, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you look at this short term, yeah, maybe. But if you look at it long term, man, that's the way to look at it. And honestly, we need to be all investing more in real estate. So that's what I say.
Right. Yeah. I mean, almost becoming the financial advisor when it comes to real estate.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you're so inspiring. You have a podcast yourself and you spend time empowering women in leadership roles, right? We want to share a little bit about that?
Yes. So I am a co-host on a podcast called Empire Building, and which is all about how to build a big business, but an even bigger life. And there's 4 of us that we all happen to be females, all happen to be mothers. And we really focus on amplifying the lives and voices of women in business around the world, which is how our company started, called Herbex Life, which is really about making sure, leadership is lonely, building an empire is lonely, building a team is lonely, but leadership, when you are leading, man, at times can be so lonely. And many times we let other parts of our life sort of go to focus on leading. And so Her Best Life is about all of the circles of your life and living your best life, not just with work, but really pouring into leaders, female leaders, and amplifying their voices. So that's one of my passions.
So let me ask you a question on that. So if somebody wanted to get involved with that on a higher level, we discussed the podcast, and you also have an annual event, don't you?
Yeah, we have an annual event. They can go to herbestlife.com to get information on that. And honestly, one other thing on this topic, and obviously I'm super passionate about it, the real estate industry is 65% female. So if you look at the licenses, 65% of realtors are females. But then if you study the top teams, only about 30% are female led. Only about 30% are female led because of the pressure. I believe it's because of the pressure that is put on the female in general. And then also there have not been a lot of females that have been vocal when they're raising their family and having kids, and they have their head down, focused on their business. So then that way, when you look at a panel of top teams, a lot of times they're men. And so it's like sort of the 4-minute mile rule, where if you don't see it, right, if you don't see it's possible, then a lot of times you don't search for that. And so a big part of what we do is we want to change that. We want there to be more powerful female leaders, and how we're going to do that is by pouring into them. So if anyone's interested in knowing more about it, you can go to herbestlife.com and we talk all about this. So
I love it. And love it because you yourself, you have 3 children.
Yes.
And you've been 16 years in the business, and your children are, they're
8, 6, and 2. And so I was building this business while having babies, while feeding babies, which is a part-time job, by the way. Okay. And doing all the things that come with mothering. And so it's different. It's definitely different. I haven't had a stay-at-home wife. It's been a lot.
So you really know the challenges in going through that and making that commitment to build the team while raising a family, right? And so many women probably have to feel like they have to make a choice between one or the other.
Yeah. And honestly, if I had to narrow it down in terms of what it is, there's a couple things. I think a lot of the financial models that you look at for real estate teams don't take into account, enough leverage for if it's a female leader. I have to have more help at home than other leaders if they do have like a stay-at-home wife or someone that's supporting them at home. And so there's that. But honestly, it has been figuring out leverage and hiring and learning. The important part of my role is to know what is the highest use of my time. And that was the case, honestly, 12 years ago when my business was really small. And that's still the case today, to make sure that I'm focusing my time on the most important things and learning the power of hiring correctly and hiring the right people and putting them in the right seat on the bus. So that's been a huge key to how we've been able to do it.
And how important is flexibility, like literally on the job, right? Like
it's everything. So, I mean, not only am I a young mom, I mean, the majority of those that work with me are young moms. And I'm constantly saying, like, we are not one of those teams that we cannot be one of those teams that are like so rigid because we are responsible for young lives. And at times that means that you have to leave and go home and take care of the sick kid. And we just support one another. Like, our team really supports the young moms in terms of like, maybe not having set hours necessarily, like to where they come in a little bit later in the day because they're with their babies in the morning, or they didn't sleep because their baby was up all night. But as long as you come in and you get your job done, and whatever time that works out for you and your family. So I'm flexible is a word that is said a lot around here, a lot. So
flexibility and maybe a little graciousness, right? Like not being so
yes.
hard on yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
And other people. So let me ask you this. I'm assuming, okay, so I'm an agent, and I'm a female agent.
Yes.
And I'm beautiful too.
Yeah.
I'm a beautiful female agent right now. And I am, I have young children, and I would love the idea of scaling my business. And I'm assuming there's a period of time that you go through where, things are just out of control. Right. And it's just absorbing all your time. And then I'm assuming that there's some periods where it's the opposite. Is there a point in the business in scaling it where there is more freedom and flexibility? And if so, where is that?
No is my immediate answer, but that's just because, like, I think that's parenting in general. Like, I remember when I got pregnant with Olivia, I was the first of my parents' kids to get pregnant. And my dad was like, "Congratulations, your life is now over." And I was like, that's a horrible thing to say. And now as a parent, I'm like, yep, my life is now over. So if you combine the two, which, I mean, we believe and we do life together, right? If you combine the two, there's always big stuff going on, and there's always things that we're sort of focusing on. I do think that there comes a point where you have more freedom at home to focus on your kids, and that took me. I learned that the hard way, to be honest, because I did a lot of sacrificing. I sacrificed a lot with my family. in the very beginning, probably the most, about the first 5 years of my daughter Olivia's life, I missed more bedtimes than was home for bedtimes. It's one of my biggest regrets of my life. And I share it openly because I don't want other moms to do that, right? Because at the end of the day, we have a short period of time with our children, and making sure that we are time blocking our time during the day to do as much work as we can, to where when we get home, we can focus on them. And then for full transparency, I do a lot of work once they go to bed. So the work continues. I don't go right to sleep. So, but yeah, it's been a balance, for sure, not a balance, a counterbalance, being all in on work and then being all in on at home when I'm at home, but then also intertwining. Like for me, I've got 2 young girls. So I'm passionate about showing them they can be whatever they want to be. Like whatever you want to be, you can be, right? I was traveling, I know I'm rambling here, but I was traveling this past weekend, and I was FaceTiming my daughter Olivia, and she's 8, and she says to me, and she said, "Where are you?" And I said, I'm at a hotel." And she goes, "Okay, when are Reynolds hotels opening up?" And I was like, I'm winning as a mom. I'm winning because my daughter is like, she's like, whatever, like is thinking big, and like, it feels like we can accomplish a lot. So I'm like, that's winning.
You say, is that your goal? Is that your goal?
I said, that sounds awesome, honey, for you to do.
For you to do.
Yes, exactly.
Well, Sarah Reynolds, this was outstanding. You are so inspirational. You're such a powerful leader. We are so lucky at the Close Weekly to have you on episode 1 of 1. 1 of 1.
1 of 1. That's awesome.
1 of 1 right now.
Yeah. So I would hope that our listeners say this was their favorite one.
That's right. This is the best episode, the best episode ever recorded of the Close Weekly. And give us just a bottom line. What is the thing that we should be thinking about in 2022?
So the big thing is focus on the plan, not the problem. Whatever plan that you put in place for your business for 2022, focus on that. You're going to hear lots of us talk about trends and the things that could be problems, but focus on the plan, get your key actions in place to help the number of families that you desire to serve this year, and keep focusing on giving more value. And when you do that, I'm telling you, you always win.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.